Hey everyone, welcome to the Chris Gunther Show. Thank you so much for your love and support. Be sure to like and share, and please tag somebody in this video. Anybody that knows me knows that this man sitting right next to me, he is a legend. He is a father in the gospel. Talk about none other than the Honorable Severican Bishop C. Shawn Tyson. What's going on, man?
What's going on, son?
First of all, thank you for taking this time out with me to chop it up. Very busy man, pastoring 2 churches, so we greatly appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So first things first is, how are you doing?
I'm doing blessed. As you know, I'm a walking, talking, living, breathing miracle.
All the way.
So I'm just glad to be here, as old folks say.
And when you mention walking, talking, breathing miracle, as many of the people, they don't necessarily know all the details of it, but you had, in the past few months, been challenged with kidney stones. Can you mention that a little bit?
Sure. Well, as you know, I've had a history of kidney stone challenges the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And if you've never had them, I hope you never do.
Right.
It's a pain that'll put a grown man on his face calling for Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and his mama. Well, I thought I had a kidney stone because the pain was similar to that.
Correct.
It's excruciating. And I went into the hospital under the pretense of having a kidney stone, but as testing proved, in this case, it was not a kidney stone.
Right.
I had a cyst about the size of a golf ball.
Correct.
That had grown in my ureter. That had caused my kidney to become badly infected.
Yes.
Which is resulting in me being very sick. That was when I lost that weight real fast. I lost about 40 pounds in 40 days.
Yes.
And discovered it was because my kidney was so badly infected. When they removed the cyst, put one stent in one of my kidneys, which facilitated the flow of fluids. And, you know, at that point we thought we were home free.
Sure did.
But the devil is very persistent.
All the way.
And I would think that our viewers need to understand, just because the devil didn't knock you out with one punch, don't ever think that he's not coming back with another one.
Yes.
So you have to close the back door when you're dealing with spiritual warfare. As it turned out, that situation evolved, long story short, ended up going into full renal failure, kidney failure. I was in the hospital with 11.9 creatinine level. Doctor wanted to put me on dialysis.
Yes.
The next day. But thank God for the power of the prayers of the effectual, fervent, praying saints.
Yes.
Saints here at Calvary, Christ Church, and around the nation began to pray on my behalf. And God miraculously intervened and caused my creatinine level to go down in 48 hours.
Sure did.
From 11.9 to 1.3. The nephrologist said she had never seen such a thing happen. She said, somebody is on your side.
We know who that somebody is.
I had to let her know who it was. JESUS is on my side.
All the way. And to see how God just supernaturally stepped in and touched you is a blessing to so many people. What advice would you give to those who will be watching this? They're in a storm. They're in some kind of physical battle. Sometimes it's mentally, sometimes it's spiritually, and they just feel as if it's overwhelming them.
I understand that feeling because as God speaks to us, Satan also speaks to us. He told me more than once during that process that I was going to die, that I wasn't going to make it. But this is another reason why it's important to be a part of a fellowship of believers, because no matter how strong you are or think you are, at some point you're going to have weak moments.
Yes.
It was the prayers and the testimonies and support, encouragement of the saints that kept me going. That's the first thing. You need a strong support system. The second thing is do not allow your symptoms to make you lose faith.
Yes.
Remember, faith is not a feeling. Faith is a fact. The fact being that God, who cannot lie,
Absolutely.
has put his word on the healing of those who will believe God for their healing. Your symptoms oftentimes speak the antithesis of what faith is and what faith does.
Yes.
But when that occurs, just keep pouring the word into your spirit. Keep believing God. And certainly, last but not least, keep praising God.
Yes.
I'm still in my process of healing, still dealing with some things, as you know. But Sunday, man, I had a praise fit.
Yeah, you did.
I went to Praise Mountain. I went into a praise palace.
At the Praise Palace.
At the Praise Palace.
Literally.
Because I can't do everything that I want to do or that I would normally do, but I'm sure going to do everything I can do.
It's crazy because you mentioned you can't do everything you want to do. But when we still see you ministering and praying for people, most would assume that he's back to normal. Only if they realize he's only going at half speed. What advice would you give to preachers that need to take care of themselves?
Very important. And starting in your youth. Now that I'm 29, I can't do everything I used to do when I was 18.
Right.
But hindsight being 2020, there are some things that I could have and should have done starting when I was your age that probably would have helped preserve my body once I got to this stage in my life. So eat right, try to get your rest. And, sleep patterns are difficult for an evangelist.
Yes, it is.
Because of travel schedules, different time zones, different spirit zones. So it's difficult to get into a regular pattern. But you have to try to get your rest. The late, great Bishop M.E. Golder, who we referred to as the Prince of Preachers, I was told when he was preaching on the road, he would take a nap every afternoon from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. so that his mind, his body, and his spirit could be sharp for those evening services. So I recommend that, particularly for evangelists and ministers that preach on the road.
Yes.
Try to get you a pattern, eat right. One thing that I started doing when I started traveling, instead of eating at all those fast food restaurants, asked one of the saints to prepare a dinner for me.
Yes.
So I knew I'd have something good to eat. And then last but not least, exercise.
Yes.
Try to walk. It's something that we implemented here at Calvary with the brothers. At least 15, 20 minutes a day. Keep your cardiovascular in good shape and try to preserve yourself as long as you can.
And you've done that. You continue to get better. But take me back to the beginning stages. You went full time in the ministry, I believe, at the age of 21.
Yeah.
And now, to see a lot of time has passed, what have been some of the greatest challenges that you faced earlier in your ministry?
Well, Paul told Timothy, let no man despise thy youth. So one of the challenges as a young minister is earning the respect of elderly congregants. A lot of times in those early years, I would be one of the youngest people in the congregation.
Right.
When I would go to preach. And I used the word earn, not demand. So you earn respect by respecting others.
Yes.
So I always would respect the elderly saints, respect the pastor, go in with the intent not to rebuke and correct, but to edify and electrify.
Yes.
By the power of the Holy Spirit. And these things enabled me to gain the respect of pastors and of saints around the country, and just go in with a servant mentality.
Yes.
I didn't just go preach. I would go pray. I would go teach the choir. I would go play the organ.
Yes.
I would do whatever was necessary to get Jesus Christ lifted in that atmosphere and that environment. Just be a servant and God will honor that.
You mentioned playing. Most people don't understand and don't even know that you were a playing preacher. You would play for your home church, play for the PAW, play for all the conventions before you even preached.
Yes.
And I remember you had told the church that when you were about 15 years old, you played at a state convention and you got offered $10,000 right there to go play with
Indiana State Fair.
play Indiana State Fair. You had played for somebody singing, I believe, When I Think of Home.
Yeah, in a beauty contest.
Yes. And there was somebody there who was they were a representative for one of the most popular groups, Parliament and Funk, offered you $10,000 right there. Why did you turn that down?
The Gap Band.
Gap Band.
Because I understood that gifts from God are gifts for God. I made a decision at a young age not to cast my pearls before swine. I always wanted my music and my worship to direct people toward God and not toward Satan.
Yes.
You know, music always creates an atmosphere. It also always prompts and provokes various different spirits. I do not see how I, as a worshiper and as a saint of God, can play and present music that will create desires, feelings,
Yes.
actions in people that are contrary to the God we serve.
Yes.
So that was a decision that I made early on, and I also had the heavy hand of Bishop James Edison Tyson to keep me on course.
You mentioned heavy hand of Bishop James Edison Tyson. How much influence did your father have on your ministry?
Man, everything. Bishop, my dad, Bishop James E. Tyson, our pastor, Bishop Norman L. Wagner, your pastor and my spiritual mentor. Those two, my brother,
Yes.
Bishop Laverne Tyson, and who's my pastor now, and also Dr. Leonard Scott, my uncle, the president of Ty Scott Records.
Yes.
Those four were the major influences on me as a young minister, kept me on my path,
Yes.
kept me focused, kept me humble, made sure that I maintained a servant's attitude, and ensured that, as my father said, learn how to follow a direct order.
Following a direct order is from what I
You know about that, don't you?
Oh, yes. It's something I learned several times with you, even just being here at Calvary serving. But I remember in 2009, you were preaching in California. You received a phone call from Bishop Wagner, and he said that he was having a 5 a.m. prayer and he needed you to be here.
Yes.
You rearranged your entire schedule to come home.
Absolutely.
At the end of that prayer meeting, he called you into his office and said, there comes a time when sons must become fathers. Are you ready? What was that conversation like?
Wow. In retrospect, I had no idea that would be the last conversation that we had prior to Bishop's transition. And we have been trained here that whenever the bishop calls for you, that is your number one priority.
Yes.
So I was out in California. I was in revival, and Bishop had the office call, say, I need you to get to Youngstown immediately. I shared with the pastor because I'm always a person, even when you're in authority, you're under authority.
Absolutely.
You know, so whenever my dad or Bishop Wagner called for me, that became my first priority. So I preached that night, flew into Youngstown the next morning, and was here for that life-changing prayer experience.
Yes.
You know, which is something that Calvary is known for, a prayer. Bishop called me and Elder David Hollis. Comes a time when sons must become fathers. Are you ready? I said, Bishop, I'm getting ready. Getting ready won't work here, son. You must be ready. And at the time, I could not know the urgency of what he was saying.
Yes.
I felt it, but I couldn't see it.
Yes.
So that was the last conversation that I had with Bishop Wagner before he transitioned. Sons must become fathers.
In July of 2010, you assumed the pastorate here at Calvary Ministries International. What was it like your first Sunday morning here?
A dream, like a dream,
Yes.
because I was at Christ Church the Sunday before
Right.
on the organ, doing what I do in my home church. And the next Sunday, I was the pastor of Mount Calvary. It was kind of a whirlwind situation, like a dream, because I was 5 years old when we left Calvary to go to Indianapolis.
Right.
So I grew up in Indiana, would visit Youngstown from time to time because my grandparents were here. And of course, we would come back and visit the church.
Yes.
But I had never imagined that I would be the pastor here. It was like a dream. Sometimes still like a dream. I walk in, I'm like, oh, how did I get back here?
Yes.
But sometimes God takes our lives in full circles. So I think for parents, it's very important that you give a child a solid spiritual foundation in their formative years, because the first 5 years of my life were here.
Yes.
Youngstown, Calvary, gone 40 years, and God kind of brought me right back to where everything started for our family.
Yes.
My parents were saved here. So while we grew up in Indiana, Calvary was always home.
And 2 years later, you returned back to Christ Church to assume the pastorate there.
Yes.
So pastoring Christ Church and Calvary. What is it like to do that? Because the outside looking in would say, how?
Yeah. From the inside looking in, you say, how? Well, my answer to that would be God and great help.
Yes.
So we have the blessing of having very capable ministers, very capable staff in both churches.
Absolutely.
So that tremendously helps me do my job, which a major part of that is to develop others and also to delegate authority. Because the era in leadership in terms of pastoral ministry, the era of the one-man show is over.
All the way.
Never should have started. But for reasons which ministers in previous generations, I'm sure, had good intentions, they felt such a personal responsibility for the welfare of the ministry.
Yes.
That in many cases they were hesitant, reluctant to delegate too much authority. But in this season, as we grow, as we learn, hopefully we can preserve
Yes.
great leaders longer by taking some of that burden off of them and exercising the Jethro principle,
Yes.
which Jethro shared with Moses. Put your spirit on these people, let them do the work of God, and you only handle what they can't handle, which should be very minimal if they're being trained, taught, and instructed properly.
You have trained and instructed so many people behind the scenes, such as myself, Elder Cameron Adams, and your son, Pastor James E. Tyson II. How proud of you to see that your son is following in your footsteps.
Very proud. And it's a very gratifying feeling. My son and my sons. Because, son, I don't believe that there is success without a successor. So if you are great, but you do not make the individuals that you are training and mentoring greater, in my estimation, you have failed in your assignment.
Yes.
Later is always greater. So I have every expectation that you and Cameron and Jet and Brandon and all my sons in the gospel here in Calvary Christ Church and across the nation And I'm showing my age now, calling y'all sons. But Bishop told me embrace fatherhood.
Yes.
And I had, to the most part, mastered sonship, but was reluctant to embrace fatherhood because I associated it with getting old.
Yes.
But I'm being transformed by the renewing of my mind, and I'm now associating it with getting better.
All the way.
So you guys have to be great. If you are not great, then I will be classified as a failure.
And we're glad that you're not a failure.
No, sir.
And we appreciate you for everything that you do. Now, in this generation of millennials, a lot of times it's challenging. What is something that you feel that most pastors can do in the millennial era to bring those to church?
Try to remain as relevant as possible. Dialogue with your young people.
Yes.
Stay in the loop. Let them tell you what's going on. And don't be intimidated by them having superior knowledge in some cases. We certainly want to rely upon those who know the way for wisdom.
Yes.
But young men see visions. So we have to rely upon the integrity of our young people to share visions concerning the future that will allow the church to remain relevant in this highly technological and fast-moving age.
It is fast-moving, and you yourself are a fast-moving person. Have you ever considered retiring?
I'm not considering retiring at this point. It's somewhere in my future. I see it down the road. And this is not to say that we should not plan for the future, but to maintain focus.
Yes.
You kind of have to keep your eyes on what's in front of you. I will say this. I probably wouldn't use the word retire. I would probably use the word refocus and repurpose.
Yes.
Because I'm going to always be involved in ministry in some capacity. But I'm very much positioning myself to push young ministers to the front of the leadership paradigm and use whatever influence and wisdom that I can to push them and tell y'all, go ahead and preach.
I can really see you doing
While I sit in the pool with a pinstripe double-breasted suit on with my tie and my hair fried down and laid to the side and just wave my hand. Go ahead, son.
I can really see you doing that. We got to get out of here, but we appreciate you. Before we head out, how can people stay connected to you at both churches?
Absolutely. At Christ Church, you can stay connected via our Facebook page, Christ Church Apostolic Facebook, and you can stay connected with us at Calvary at calvary4u.org. Calvary, the number 4, the letter U.org. You can watch us there every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. And you can watch us at Christ Church every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. You watch the Bible study on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and Thursday, Christ Church at 7 p.m. Or better yet, you can just come to the church at 1812 Oak Hill Avenue in the city of God, Youngstown, Ohio, 44705, or the Praise Palace, 6601 Grandview Drive, also known as Bishop James E. Tyson Drive, Indianapolis, Indiana, Holy Ghost headquarters.
Nothing else needs to be asked. The most honorable bishop, appreciate you, sir.
Anytime, son. Keep making great happen.
Yes, sir.